Is becoming a data engineer actually worth it? This could offend some people, but instead of saying yes like everyone else, we're gonna take a closer look in this video and see if this job really is so great, or if it's overrated and something that you should avoid. We're gonna start with a breakdown of the job responsibilities, and then we'll talk about salaries, job outlook and future growth, as well as job satisfaction and how real data engineers feel about their jobs. Finally, we're gonna talk about the pros and cons, and I'm not gonna hold back in this video at all, so drop a like and subscribe, and let's get started. So first, what does a data engineer actually do? Well, they design and construct data management systems, develop and maintain ETL processes to extract, transform, and load data. They may have to integrate different data management technologies and different tools, as well as optimize the actual data storage and data retrieval, and in general ensure that the data is of high quality, that it's secure, and that it's accessible to those who need it. All in all, they're supposed to make the data useful to the company, so that, for example, a data scientist can take this data to investigate and solve a business problem. They're basically the backbone of the data team in the company. Let's talk about salaries. And according to Talent.com, the average salary of a data engineer in the US is around $130,000 per year. We can see that the range is very wide, with salaries on average $107,000 on the low end, but up to $172,000 on the high end. There's going to be a huge difference between people depending on their experience level, their location, and even the company itself. For example, you'll often make way more money at top tech companies or top startups. Here we can see the different salaries based on the different states in the US, and as you can see, West Virginia does not have a lot of data recorded, so I wouldn't be so sure about this one. But then we can see that California, Washington, and New York are in the top, which is quite reasonable. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we'll see that the salaries decreased by at least $30,000 to $40,000 per year. So there can be a huge salary difference between where you're located, even in the same country. But of course, different places have different cost of living and different taxes and all that stuff as well. So there's multiple things to consider. Moving on to the job outlook for a data engineer. Will there actually be jobs in 5 years or in 10 years? And what does the growth look like? In 2022, the US government predicted a 35% increase in the next 10 years for data scientist roles. This does not include data engineers, but the massive growth is not limited to the data scientist role, because we can expect it to be similar for data engineer, because without data engineers, well, data scientists are not able to do their work properly. I also found a really interesting article, and here we're looking at the job market and the demand by years of experience. And there's often talk about there not being any entry-level jobs, I hear that all the time, and now we can actually see the reality. We can see that only 11% of the jobs required less than 1 year of experience, so about 1/10 of the jobs were entry-level. We can also see that about 7% of the jobs required 2 years of experience. But of course you would add these up to get the total amount of jobs. We can see that 32% required 3 years of experience, 8% of the jobs required 4 years of experience, and 32% 5 years, and 6 years of experience, and 7+ years at 1.5% and 8.5%. From this data, we can see that around 90% of data engineering jobs required at least 1 year of experience, so it's no wonder that it's difficult to find your first job. But according to this data, it also means that once you get past 2 years of experience, it becomes significantly easier. In the beginning, when you start out at an entry level, you only have access to about 11% of the total jobs on the job market for data engineers. By your next year, it moves to 18%, and by year 3, you have access to 50% of the data engineering jobs instead of the 11% that you started with. So you basically have 5 times as many jobs to apply to. And I really love this visualization because it actually proves the point that as you get more experience, it does become significantly easier. And I think as beginners, this is something really good to look at if we're feeling demotivated when facing the challenges of the junior job market. Moving on, we're going to cover job satisfaction. And this is really important because salary is one thing, but job satisfaction requires us to look at a much bigger picture. There aren't that many sources for this, but I found some insights on Glassdoor. And here, work-life balance has been rated 3.9 from 25,000 reviews of data engineers. The compensation and benefits have been rated a 3.7 out of 5, but there is a lot more to say about this one than just looking at the numbers. So let's move on to the pros and cons of the data engineering role. But first, here's a disclaimer from me. So these are not my experiences. I've read reviews, gone through discussion topics and forums, and just generally gathered things that people find to be pros and cons of this job. These are really important things that you should know before you get started, and if you don't know this, then you might end up going down the wrong path and doing something that's a terrible option for you. There's a relatively high demand for data engineers, and it's across various industries. If we compare it to roles like the data scientist and data analyst, even though I know they're not, completely comparable, the data engineer is a less well-known role. But it's actually very good, and the people that are working as data engineers are usually making good money, they're doing important work, and they have a lot of career opportunities. It's a field that's also growing as data is becoming more and more important and the quantities and complexities are just increasing. For that reason, I think it's a relatively safe bet as well, although of course some responsibilities might change with AI as for most jobs. Now let's talk about some of the downsides of becoming a data engineer. The first thing is that it actually requires a lot of technical skill to get started. I mean, you're working with really important stuff, the data pipelines, the data storage, and each mistake can cause a lot of harm to the company. This is why you'll need a lot of skills to become a data engineer, both technical skills that you can apply as well as a solid education. There are ways to become a data engineer without a degree, and there are many different paths as always, but most companies are going to appreciate a degree, and some experience working with data is always also going to be helpful. It can also be a pretty stressful job as you're doing so many different important things, and there may be complex problems, tight deadlines, and situations where people rely on your work to continue the project. Sometimes the work can also be repetitive, and if you're a more creative person out for, analyzing data and gathering insights, then perhaps the data engineer is not the best job for you. But all in all, it's a very good role for the right person, and check out this video somewhere on the screen if you're interested in data science, as it's one of my most popular videos, and I'll see you over there.